Welcome to our production Q&A. And so the way this will work is we'll go through, you could ask a question, I'll repeat it into the mic for recordability, and then our panel here will answer it. So down here on the end, we have Luke Jackson with Churchfront. In the middle, we have Aaron Miller with Mission Hills Church, and then Chris Ward here on the end with Cornerstone Prescott. And so I don't know, do you guys want to kind of share real briefly? You know, I know some of these people were in some of the sessions that you guys are, the breakouts that you guys have taught, but kind of share who you are briefly, give a quick background.
Yeah, my name is Luke. I work at Churchfront. We are a YouTube channel that aims to help people lead gospel-centered, tech-savvy worship and remove distractions from your worship environments. I help coach anywhere between 70 to 100 students in a program we run called Worship Ministry School that helps them learn skills like running audio or building a broadcast infrastructure, running slides, or pastoral leadership, growing and scaling your team. So I help that team do that and host our podcast, the Churchfront Podcast. So that's my main role, but been in worship ministry and production ministry for almost 15 years now. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
My name is Aaron Miller. I'm at Mission Hills Church down in South Littleton, South Denver area. I am the technical director there, which means for us, I handle a lot of the operations, the scheduling, budget, all the detail pieces. I work with all the creatives to make sure that their ideas come to life, keep all the gear running. I am 23 years as a sound guy, and along the way, to stay employed, I learned video and lighting. And its systems have just gotten bigger and bigger and the technology changes. So I try to help our team that the stuff all works and that the people are there and that their hearts are in the right place. And yeah, that's my part to play.
I'm Chris Ward. I'm the volunteer production director at Cornerstone Evangelical Free Church in Prescott, Arizona. 33 years of ministry, pretty much every role you can think of: youth pastor, young adult pastor, apologetics ministry director, school of ministry online, and senior pastor, church planter. I actually helped plant Calvary South Denver in 1991 here in Littleton with Gino Geraci. So if you guys listen to Grace FM and listen to him in the morning, I can tell you stories. So anyway, currently, though, doing that, I was a missionary in the UK and established an online ministry, school of ministry. My tent-making job is teaching IT service management, Cisco, Microsoft, AWS, how to use that in business situations, so that way you can take technology, because it's not about the tech, it's how you use technology, which is important, which is kind of what we do. It's not about the tech. We can find tech. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? And all of you are in that same position. So I've been doing that. I got dragged kicking and screaming into it. So so that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go ahead and open it up. And, so if anybody has any questions, let's start here in the back. So really the question is how do I mix the sound if I'm leading worship? I oversee the whole audio video side, and I want to, how do I tell how the sound is sounding out to the people sitting out in the seats and while I'm on stage?
I'll let Aaron talk about virtual sound check. But what our pastor did, J.B. Parker, who by the way works with Scott Cunningham at Likewise now, and he's one of those guys. He wants everything to sound great. He's a wireless guy. So he had his pack on. He had his guitar with him. He would hop off the stage. I forgot to tell you, we're in a $35 million performing arts center. That's a community, basically the community colleges. It's a long walk. And so for him, he moved to, which what Aaron will tell you, and Luke will probably talk about as well, he would get into the house. He would literally walk as the band was playing, and he would sing a little bit, put the mic down, and then he'd close his eyes, and he'd play, and he would hear, and then he would just, that would give him that sense. And it was usually about the third song into the rehearsal in the morning. We're mobile church, so we're there at 05:30, and rehearsal starts at 0700. So, by that time, we've pretty much fixed any line issues, sound issues, things like that. So that gave him a chance to go, hey guys, can you kick up the low end a little bit? Oh, fill in a little bit more keys, yada, yada, yada. That's how he did it. But instead of getting out and walking all the way.
So first and foremost, it's building that relationship between your worship leader and your tech so that they don't feel like you don't trust them by coming out there, but making sure that they understand, hey, are you hearing this? Hey, this is what I'm hearing. I know this is what we are shooting for. Verbiage is always a key between tech and worship leader. Being on the same team, making sure that I'm here to offer support. I'm here to offer insight in what I'm hearing. If you're hearing something else, let's communicate on that. Once that part's established, great. If you're able to make it out in the house and help them develop that sound together, great. Another piece of that is if you're able to multi-track everything from rehearsal, and then during the week you got some time to work with your techs, and whether that's scheduled or just if they're on staff, you have some time. Virtual sound check is an absolute game changer. When we moved over to digital consoles, and especially when they started building that feature into a lot of, whether it's through USB or Dante or however you're getting out and getting back in, you can sit there and just hash through it piece by piece or as a whole and go for it.
I'm going to reveal my ignorance. What is virtual sound check?
Okay, so a virtual sound check is, so you normally do a sound check where the band's on stage, they're playing the song, and you're, as a audio engineer, you're trying to build your mix. Well, virtual sound check is, I have multi-tracked, so I've recorded every one of the instruments separately to whatever DAW or whatever platform.
Not in a combined band set.
Not in like a stereo already mixed, but kick, snare, drums, bass, all at the same time.
Isolated channels.
Isolated channels. Like if you've ever seen in a recording studio, they've got every track laid out on the thing. You're basically recording that live during either a rehearsal or during a service, and then you have a platform then to play that back into your soundboard without the band being there. You have them recorded, just like you would in studio. That's where it came from, was the live guys are like, the studio guys get to run these songs for 8 hours straight and listen to it. We get like 3 times through it over the course of 15 minutes to get it polished. So does that help?
If I can ask a clarifying question. So we have 24 channel and it's digital and we can record, but it's the feed of everybody as we're playing. And so you get, the mics pick up other stuff as we're playing.
Right.
Is that can that facilitate a virtual sound check?
Hold on 6. So the question then is can a 24-channel board facilitate a virtual sound check, right?
It depends on which one you're on. Ellen Heath, QU?
Yeah.
I think that one's.
I don't think it has
I don't think that one has the ability to.
I think you can
multi-track
record a stereo mix
It'll do a stereo mix, but
of the whole thing, but not independent tracks.
yes.
The one solution but it adds a whole nother piece of equipment is what you would actually do is in between there, you'd actually have to have recorders for the channels coming in through like Dante or some other system like that.
Yeah.
I think you've answered my question. It's something that we could aspire to but can't do today.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'll speak to the guitar question again, or the worship leader sound thing real quick too. This is, I think, another opportunity for leadership development, and you could also, what I've done in the past is schedule a second AG or a second acoustic player so that if you don't have a wireless pack, if you don't have the ability to step off stage, without like kind of taking off your whole rig, you can still listen to what an acoustic sounds like in the mix. Maybe you're just not playing and you're going out kind of giving a little bit more hands-on constructive criticism, but you've still got that acoustic in the mix. And in my experience, an acoustic player like a second AG is pretty supplementary. It's not super, we're not like depending on that musician for that role. It's nice to have as like a join the team, come play, like, you know, be a part of what we're doing here. But yeah, learn and grow with us. And but that way you can hear still what that sounds like in the mix and continue to give that support.
Great.
Can I ask just a quick follow-up to that? So we currently on Saturdays we practice record everything stereo into the Dropbox, so that way I can go back and just kind of listen to practice. But it's not individual channels; it's just one mix. Is that an accurate listening through Dropbox? Is that an accurate representation of the house mix, or is that?
Not
So
unless you
the-
play it back through the house. Play it back through the speakers that it's being played through. Because listening on headphones, like you're not dealing with the room or the PA, good, bad, or indifferent. Put it back through the PA so you can listen to it and go, oh, right here, like, could we do more bass, drums, guitar, or whatever pieces?
And just a real quick touch on it. I worked with a guy that was actually doing this, and what he actually had the worship pastor do is they would do 3 services. First service, he would record it, because now what do you have? People in the room. And that changes the atmosphere. And that was the thing. And he goes, man, it sounds so good. And then people came in and it dampened everything. And so it soaked it up. And he's like, why does it sound, And he's like, no problem. We can do it during rehearsal, but we can also do it during first service. Boom, come do it after.
Yeah, and then we had another question right here.
So we kind of have the issue of our band and our production staff are almost kind of split. What tips or whatnot can you do to kind of help them the two working in tandem? And instead of production trying to work to get the band sounding good, they kind of work together.
So basically, how do we get a band and production that have a split? Like, how do we get them to work together? What type of tips do you have so they would work together?
I kind of default to maybe 2 things initially. One is just the communication and the language, the vernacular that we use during a rehearsal, during a sound check, during a setup and tear down, environment, whatever you're doing. Using common language is just super, super helpful. So having somebody who's kind of maybe spearheading that, like a TD or a worship pastor, if they can be unified in what they're saying and what that means, having defined those terms. I know it sounds like very heady, but it really does come down to, hey, when I say we're aiming for excellence, what do I mean by that? Here's what I mean by play with excellence. Here's what I mean by mix with excellence. Like, if everybody can be unified on that, then it makes those efforts or kind of the win that we're shooting for a little easier to achieve, because we're all unified in our vernacular. Other thing I think that's hard is that I don't think a lot of teams talk about wanting that unified kind of mentality. And so I think if you don't already have volunteer job descriptions, I'll just like harp on, you need job descriptions for your volunteers. One of the things I think to put in those job descriptions is, who is your direct reporter? Who do you go to communicate with? So if you're on the band and you have a question about your mix, do you go to the front of house engineer first? Do you go to your worship pastor first? Do you yell across the stage? Is there a process for, hey, can I have more of Sheila in my ears? Or is there, if there's not, then it's really hard to kind of unify people around being around the common vision or the common aim for a win that Sunday or for that service. But you can put a lot of that in writing or in kind of a talking head video of, here's kind of our standard procedure for, here's how we run a line check. And if there's a problem, here's how we're handling noise in an electric guitar signal. Like, what is the process for that? As a TD, I would run into doing a sound check and there were 6 band members all yelling at front of house at the same time for different things. And so at one point I would just, for like a month and a half, I met them in the morning and said, like at the stage, I'd walk up and run at the stage and I'd say, hey guys, this morning, if you have questions, it needs to wait until this part in our run through for kind of me to get assessed and situated up front in a line check first. And then I'll kind of tackle questions in kind of an orderly fashion off mic, up front at the stage. I'll kind of come to you to make that work. But I had to say that for 6 to 8 weeks before that kind of became a good rhythm in our morning. But it helped people not yell at me, so, from the stage.
Relationship can't be built in the 4 hours a weekend that you get to see each other. One thing that I've done at every church I've been at is we established worship and tech. We are one family, not just a team, not just like meet outside of just Sunday mornings and build a relationship so that the camera guys get to know the guitar players. One, so when you tell them, Cam 2, can you grab Belinda? They know who Belinda is. Rather than it feels disconnected. If like Cam 1, grab stage left vocal. Yes, that's a very like high level production way of doing things, and it's not inaccurate to say that. But there's a connection that starts to happen if you know the names of people for one, but also we've seen it completely change the dynamic of a team when we are meeting outside of Sundays and just breaking bread together. I mean, your best friend, you don't just see them once a week in a high pressure environment where you're just trying to accomplish something. It's like, no, like I go get a meal with them, hang out, find common ground. Also so that you can know like, man, I can tell my guitar player's struggling this morning. So when he fired off something that was a little gruff that morning, I'm not going, man, what a turd. Like I'm not assuming something about him. I'm getting to know them as a human and not just a tool to use for my benefit as a sound person, or the guitar player thinking, oh, he doesn't like me and like you need to help me. Like, building a relationship. That's where trust that you got my back and I got yours is through relationship. And it's really hard to build that when you're in totally different areas of the worship center on Sunday mornings. You get what I'm trying to say there. Cool.
Building on, I'm going to steal everything they do. The thing that we do is early on, and we had a really good leader that kind of started this as a worship pastor, because he was a worship pastor. And I know not always will you have worship pastors. You have worship leaders, or just somebody who can play guitar and sing, and that's kind of where you're starting with. But something that we started very early on when we were in the Performing Arts Center was the reason why we have 0530 call for tech and 0600 for the band is we don't have them on stage. We can get a lot of stuff done and not step over everybody. But once they have instruments plugged in, we don't do line check. We circle up. And yeah, we're on it, and trust me, this is hard for me because I want to fix things. I know there's going to be stuff going wrong. We need to get going, right? We take 10 minutes because those 10 minutes of prayer requests, how you all doing? By the way, I was reading in the Psalms today, something that I think the Lord just gave me, and we allow anybody who wants to share something. And we just say, hey, here's the safe time. Anyone struggling today? Who's hurting right now? And because if you're doing what Aaron and Luke have been talking about, where there's processes and roles and communication and relationship. Remember the whole relational, not transactional, that Pastor Ed was talking about. It's that you now have the ability to speak grace and love into somebody's heart. Because remember, these are now the people. You are all as a creatives, because you are all, if you remember, you're creatives. We're together ushering people into the throne room of God. And if somebody's got something on their heart that is just hurting bad, it's gonna hamper things, right? So that's something that we do. The other thing that we do is we do a quick circle up at the end after we've torn down, and we do good and fun opportunity. We call them fun opportunities. Fun opportunities can be, oh, did you see? My pick went off and it pinged, Belinda in the back of the head, and everyone laughs and we have a good time, and that is important too. It's before and after. It's mandatory. Nobody is allowed unless they're dying. Yeah, very extenuating circumstances. You're not allowed to miss that, and that's what helped build our teams to really work together.
Great.
So, how when you're in an industry, right? Like, say you change lights for a living, and now every building you walk into, you just look at the lighting, you look how they fixed it. For us in worship and in production, right? Not just churches, like every restaurant that we go to, we're looking at the PA. We go to a concert, and we're just like, why does it sound like this? Why does it sound like that? Maybe it's not such a bad thing, right? It's good to assess how to do better at your craft. But how do you us especially, it gets to a point where we're just nitpicking everything. We want to worship, but then like
Can't turn it off.
we can't because we want to so.
Yeah. So then how do you manage as you go into different places, not nitpicking the sound or some of the production stuff that they have going on, and how do you turn that off to where you yourself get the opportunity to just enjoy and dive into worship without the distraction of trying to hear or see every little detail?
Aaron and I actually talked about this, kind of sitting about that. 33 years in ministry, being either I've been on stage, behind the scenes, and everything I see, every concert I go to, every show I watch, everything I see on YouTube, watching Luke and going, man, oh, hey, how's he doing that? Okay, oh, I like that lighting. He's adding that shading in the back. That's so cool. One thing I had to learn how to do is close my eyes and just not open them. Let my ears hear. And yes, then you hit the audio part. And then what I do is I try to start singing along, because if I know the songs, and then I pray. And I say, Lord, my heart is for you. You've given me this mind that is a troubleshooting, technical, production mind. That is a gift to me. Right now, though, can you just hear my heart and not my mind? And then anything that happens after that, he's heard you. He knows your heart. And see, that's an important thing, is that disconnect. And it's hard. It really is. I sit and I'm listening to pastors preach, and I'm like going, oh, that'll preach. And I start writing down that story or that thing. And I'm going to use that next week. And that is difficult. But closing my eyes, because I'm more of the video camera guy, I know for audio, that was what Aaron and I, he's like, I can't get it out of my head.
I'll let you know when I figure that one out. No, real talk. So about a month ago, I got an ear infection. Knocked everything above 7,000 hertz out of my ear, and I'm still dealing with it. At the ENT this morning, trying to deal with it. But this last month, hashing through personally, I can't listen critically. The thing that has been my thing that distracts me has come undone this last month. And so my happy place has usually been behind a mixer, because for 23 years, that was my place to worship. Right now, it's a frustration point. Just everything involved with that, I think that's less of I'm sure pastors are going through that and not picking theologically whoever's speaking's thing to pieces. As a worship leader, oh, why do you pick that arrangement and chord progression and all the things, the sound and video and lighting and all the things, looking and seeing and hearing and all the stuff. I think that's just, that comes with the territory, and that's a constant fear and trembling, just a constant praying through, God, would you settle my heart and my mind and my senses to just be with you, having that moment. And I think that's just part of the back and forth of being distracted by anything as a believer, walking into any situation, whether it be we're distracted by what we overly see and hear, but even just whatever stuff we walked into a room with. You're now dealing with the same thing that the people that walk into our worship services deal with on a weekend basis, where it may not be what they're seeing and hearing, but it's just the distractions of life that they're trying to hash through. And so trying to kind of pray that through in my own heart and mind, oh man, if I'm dealing with this, what's the person 2 seats down? Oh God, would you be with them? Or as I'm in the booth, oh, it gives me a greater heart to God, would they see past my messed up lighting cue or my bad video shot or anything like that? So I think that's just part of the process, as not just production and creatives and worship and pastors, but as a Christian, as a believer who cares about the other people in there. God, would you help use this to develop my heart for what I do? So don't despise that completely, but use that to fuel your growing relationship with him and how you worship and how you push people to worship. Yeah?
I would even say, and flip it on, I did talk about the other side of the coin, but I would even say, God doesn't waste time. And so you being in opportunities where you have maybe an experience where you notice something, you go to a cool show, or you sit in a restaurant, whatever. Like, all of those are opportunities for you to grow your knowledge, and you're experiencing new things. Maybe you're hearing a frequency in a certain setting that you've never heard before, and you're thinking, oh, I can assess that tone or that frequency differently than I do in my house of worship. Maybe you use that to coach or to teach somebody a couple years down the road, or you're noticing a PA in a unique setting, and you're thinking, like, I feel like we can always be learning, always be growing. And so some of the nitpicking is actually the way that God has made you and your skill set that he's given you, and that's what I think he is always growing you in. And you're just adding tools to your tool belt. Every time you step into a new show or a new restaurant or a new church, or you go sit at a conference and you're seeing a new setup, you're adding more and more and more to the next time God says, hey, I want to use you. I know you have this tool for this job. I'm going to encourage you to use it. And it's because of those experiences where maybe you see it as nitpicking. I would see it as like learning. But I'll say, if you want to turn it off, I think you've got to be good at Sabbath and rest and having good rhythms in your life where you do kind of unplug, if you will, and rest away from using those gifts or using those tools in your vocational environment, if that makes sense. So hopefully that's helpful.
Great. Yes, sir.
Could you comment on just cameras over the years in our church? We've, as funds become available and so forth, okay, our main camera, we've upgraded it to like a Canon C200 or whatnot, but our other two are still kind of on the lower scale, and so we're trying to up that as well. Is it important to try to have all three that are identical for color matching and matching purposes for online stream and so forth? How would you just give tips on maybe getting to that next step on other as funds are available? Replacing all three to match, or what?
So question is when you have multiple cameras, say like 3 cameras, is it important to replace all 3 or at the same time, or can you replace one and then upgrade as funds become available?
Easy button, yes. Not so easy button, because most people can't, because when you upgrade, those are pricey. What you'll find is now a lot of times the camera bodies are actually, they're coming down in price pretty well, but you're never going to get past the lenses. And the lenses are 80% of why you have issues with color correction. If you're using autofocus, well, why does this one camera goes in and out? Probably because your lenses. Color correction, I work with a young gal at the University of Florida who handles all the Gator games. Blue and orange on the floors. And so they're doing all this blue and orange, and she has to color match 18 cameras. They have, I want to say, about 7 different models that she has to match. Okay?
Sounds awful.
Okay, yeah, ready? That's the horror show, right? But what she's done is there is a way that you can run it through something like DaVinci Resolve and things like that for later, but that's afterwards. But there are systems out there that will allow you to bring all your camera signals in and make certain settings, but that's expensive. So easy button, yeah, try to get, I'm the 3+ more is the way you should always do it. You should have 3 cameras plus more. If you can do more, try to make sure you maintain at least using the same lenses more so than the camera bodies, because you can usually do things like, I noticed that at 5500K, it looks a little off, but hey, bump it up a little bit and then try to get it matching. And white balance is a real thing. And make sure that you are white balancing every single time. And we had one camera that would lose it, and we'd have to white balance it in between every single service. So it's just there's a couple of things, but yes, if you can afford it, I'm a big fan of keep those things the same.
You got a C200, so replacing 2 other C200 bodies is not super cheap. It's yeah, like you said, it's getting better. But I would probably make the argument that if it's not distracting at this point, be a good steward of what you have for as long as you possibly can. The minute that becomes like you're watching a shot and the pastor's skin tone looks great and well balanced, and then the next he looks like a Smurf because it's just not the same color, then you probably should have that conversation of how do we either integrate tools at a cost-effective rate or just upgrade a body. So that's, I mean, I would say just, yeah, if it becomes a distraction, that's when I'm like, okay, we got to pull a trigger on, on upgrading a body. We've had the same cameras for 5 years now. They're like, they're Panasonic broadcast cameras, and they make our pastor look like he's in the upside down. If anybody's a Stranger Things person, like there's just no dimension to the shot. It just looks like he is floating on a black abyss of nothing. And so we are aware of that. And so we are actually in that process of talking about new cameras. And that was part of the process of, do we keep these old ones and keep that kind of shot experience where he looks like he's just in this black abyss? Or do we get two camera bodies that actually add some depth of field to kind of correct that experience for our online viewers and our overflow, all those kind of experiences as well?
Yeah, back here. Cost-effective way to mic a drum.
That's a lot of variables in that question, man.
What kind of room are you in?
Yeah, there's any number of things in there, like what.
So that's just to get it out on the stream, not.
Go ahead.
Kick snare overhead.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Love you, brother. Drums are the bane of my existence online, only because up until recently, we had 5 drummers, and they all wanted their kits.
Oh.
Thank you.
I feel like I need to give you a hug.
And finally, we at least got them to, there's the church kit. We play the church kit. You can bring your snare, because they like their snares, and you can bring cymbals, but everything else has to stay the same. Miking them is going to be, you just have to play around with it. And the final solution for us that solved a lot of that was we went with the Roland, and the hybrid set. So it's basically all plugged in. I can, my audio guy can control everything with that, and using triggers and stuff like that.
Yeah. Do you guys have is an acoustic kit or is an electric kit? Yeah. I mean, if you already have an acoustic kit, you can get triggers and put them on the kit, and then those triggers go to front of house and they can set to your broadcast mix. That's a great option because you're not investing. I mean, triggers are not super spendy, so they're pretty affordable. You just have to integrate the technology to get that signal to front of house. But the other thing, I mean, if you're talking about miking and even thinking about scaling into a bigger room or next season of ministry, I mean, I think any drummer who's ever recorded in studio would say kick, snare, overhead mic will get you started. And if you can't tune the heads to that drum kit and make it sound with a kick mic, a snare mic, and either 1 or 2 overhead mics, then the kit's not going to sound good regardless. So I think one simple, like a Beta 52 for sure for a kick drum mic, or a D6 from Audix is a great option. And then a SM57 for a snare. Like, I hope you have a 57 laying around.
There's a reason those have been the snare mic since like 1920.
Forever. Yeah. I don't know about an overhead, but I mean,
any pencil condenser will basically do.
And just get a good picture of the kit. Try to get a good rounded picture of the whole drum kit. You're not trying to capture cymbals. You're trying to capture the whole drum kit. If you're sending, I'm talking specifically if you're just trying to send a broadcast, I think you get away with those 3 channels, maybe even 2.
We did 4. We did 2 overheads, and because basically what that did is it solved the part. Remember where everybody wanted to bring their own kit, because then you have symbol placement, you have how they had stuff. By having the 2 doing a diagonal point, we were able to get a much better sound online. But it also comes back to what I talked about in mine about you must have a separate mix for online. And that's just the way.
Can I ask what's keeping you at, is it a channel count thing that's just keeping you at that number of microphones? Okay. So it's just, simple is fine, cheap is not.
Yep.
So trying to put multiple microphones was like, well, we can either afford a good kick mic and a good snare mic and a good overhead mic, or we can buy the Radio Shack full version of it. I'd rather see you go simple than cheap. But if you're trying to EQ the kick, the snare, and the overhead for the house, if you're able to, I talked about this a little bit, that size church, once you integrate drums, if it's that size of room, you probably need to be integrating in, I'm going to say a dirty word here, tell the drummers, you should probably put them in a cage with a top, because you want to let those guys be dynamic, because if you're making them play with rods this loud, you're not going to get near the tone out of those drums. This is assuming you've got killer drummers who know how to tune the drums properly. That is more than half the battle. Tune the drums. How many times I've thrown 18 plugins at a drum and then went up there and is well, yeah, it does sound like garbage. Doesn't matter what microphone I have on the thing. Go up there and spend some time with your drummer and just listen to the thing. So tuning of the drums is just a major part of the battle, and spending that time with your drummer to get there. Putting in a cage means you're not EQing and compressing, gating all the processing you're doing to the thing for the room. Because if you're trying to dial those drums in for the room that you're hearing it come from 5 different surfaces and the reflections and the direct and everything else, you're just going to butcher that thing, and then it doesn't matter what mics you have on there. It's going to sound really weird going through to the stream where you're not dealing with those variables. Does that make sense? So taking that time to get your drums right, put them in the cage, and then you're able to really dial them in for the PA and the stream, and then you're eliminating a lot more variables to get it whittled down to something that's way better.
So when I go back, it's Aaron said.
Yep.
That's right. You don't know my name or
That's
the guy
fine.
in the end.
That's fine. If you need to throw me under that bus, I will gladly jump in front of it.
And to have a separate mix.
And Aaron's email is Chris_Ward. Yeah, we have a question back here.
Tips. So our church, instead of a tear down every week, we meet in a multi-purpose room at a school. It's got cinder block walls and a cement floor.
I'm sorry.
That's the dream.
We're praying for you.
Tips for sound diffusion or things that we could do rather than type and drape the whole room. Is there anything that's possible?
So in a setup, tear down room, it's all cinder block. Any tips for, other than putting a curtain around the room for sound?
We have, I'll just say this. I think I want to say over half of the people that are in our worship ministry school program, they ask this question because that's where most churches start. They're meeting in a gym. They're meeting in a multi-purpose room. They're meeting somewhere that's just not their own. They can't really do a lot of stuff. And one of the successful things I think we've seen is that we've just encouraged them to partner with the building on acoustic treatment. So if you're meeting in a school and it's got cinder block walls and concrete floors, asking them if they would be willing to partner with the church on investing in some acoustic treatment for that room. Putting panels around a cinder block wall is not going to destroy a multi-purpose room. It's not going to create some, issue for them most of the time. If you really, if they have an issue with it, they're going to voice that, but it can't hurt to just ask, hey, could we make some DIY panels, or could we order some panels and put some up? And, I've been in gyms with panels up top just to kind of alleviate some of that echo and reverberation. So I always just encourage, go to that board, that principal, that kind of director of the multipurpose room and just ask if they'd be willing to do that. You can also get, panels can be put up and taken down in I think there are panel companies that do kind of the hook method as opposed to like attaching them to the walls. So it can be, I think there are some temporary solutions just in case you ever move out. I just always say, man, partner with them, ask them what is possible, what's out of the question, but what's doable. So carpet squares, like at our college, I went to CCU in Lakewood, and our chapel was in the gym, and we bought 1,000 like carpet squares that they were huge. I mean, like the size of kind of these concrete slabs. And every Tuesday, Thursday for chapel, we would just lay them down. And then after chapel, we'd pick them back up, put them on a cart, wheel them into a closet. But it just helped. It just helped absorb a little bit of that echo.
Real quick. We talked about during one of the breakouts of we're good, but we can't bend physics. So that being said, yes, because that will help a lot. Kind of going back, though, to eliminating all those sources on stage, if you go to a hybrid or electric kit, there is a number of them out there that'll still give you like the direct outs of each one of the drums so that you still have some mix going on there. But eliminating as much of the stage volume as you can so you're not getting sources that are coming from all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the sources around your stage. That'll help. I got a phone call from a school, and they were talking about like, this guy was trying to help him with an event. It was in a gymnasium, and I started unpacking it. Like, we just felt like we couldn't really hear anything because it felt like it was everywhere. Come to find out, the guy was trying to cover the entire gym with like 2 speakers, and he had them pouring in the like complete wrong direction. And so it kind of came down to like, okay, if we're just trying to cover, let's say we're just trying to cover a space this big. Okay, maybe there's like some sort of speakers that are hitting the stands that we can turn off, or just trying to get the focus of the sound down to where you have to have it and keep it at a volume, and kind of learning what's going to really get live in that room. Maybe we can work through some EQ things on the system, but you can't bend physics, but you can at least start trying to work within that and keep it isolated down and keep it from coming from everywhere else.
We solved 65% of that issue by hanging the speakers. And we went to piggyback off of what Luke said, we went to the school district and we said, we have fairly decent speakers. We invested in them, but you can't, overcome physics. I mean, you can manipulate it a little bit. Would it be okay if we hang them and you can use them? And he says, seriously? I said, yes. And he, I was the senior pastor, and my sound guy had asked, is there any way we can hang them when we, and I'm like, that's a lot of work. And so we went out and worked with their facilities guy. We hung the speakers in a way, and we used carpets. We rolled out carpets where for reflection was going to be, because you're pointing like this. And like I said, almost 70% of the issues that we were having got taken care of. And then here's the thing. The people coming to the church, they know it's a new church. They know that you're a mobile church. They're okay with the fact that it's not going to sound like a $35 million performing arts center that has a sound and acoustic engineer come in and design the entire facility so that way you can hear a pin drop in one corner over there. So they're not going to get that. Your people will be okay with that. But I think if you can hang them, do some of the other things, and work with the school district, you'll be much better.
Awesome. Let's go back over here.
Thanks for my name. My previous team does not exist.
Found it.
Your team's finding you.
Yep. They're coming.
My previous tech team doesn't exist anymore. So all that you're seeing here is what I have in my tech team. And they're all high school boys.
Young men.
Young men.
That's what's up.
Are there any training courses for sound mixing that you guys would recommend?
So the question is after the last couple of years, we have a new, a new sound team that's young men, young high school boys. Is there a training that he could get for them?
Okay. I didn't want to do that.
No harm, no foul.
Okay.
Do it. Yeah. Talk about that.
No, you.
Well, so there's a lot. I mean, obviously, like I work for, so we have a website called worshipministryschool.com. There's a course out there. Some of you might see Facebook ads for this after we get out of this. So turn off your ads or turn off your listening devices here if you don't want it. But the Beginner's Guide to Church Sound is one that we wrote. We revise it pretty much every other year or two and just make sure it's up to date. But it kind of goes through all of the definitions of what you would see on any console, analog or digital. We teach it on a digital board, but we just go through what is a gain, like what is preamp and gain, and what is EQ, and what is compression, and what are the dials that you see, threshold, limiter. We go through all of it. It's a very kind of 101 course. We go through capturing good source tone. We go through miking techniques. And then we have a secondary course that's kind of a follow-up to that called Mixing for Worship. And it kind of uses all the definitions that we taught in the Beginner's Guide and says, okay, now how do we use what we learned to process a kick drum? Like, how do we start, treating miking a kick drum? Where do you put the mic? How do you use compression to get a good kick drum sound in your mix? And then how do you, we kind of go through processing in like groups and mixes for in-ears, things like that. So as kind of our courses, we have some specific console models. So we talk about the Personas 32 SC. We talk about the Allen and Heath SQ line. We talk about the X32 and the M32. I think we do the Behringer Wing as well. So we've got kind of a coverage of most common small to mid-sized church digital consoles, and just try to teach it really linearly, like very step-by-step, very kind of, if you've never seen something before. So if you come into it and you're like, I already know all this, that's kind of the heart behind it, is to make sure that if you know nothing coming in, this is where you get started. So worshipministryschool.com will be a good place to do that, or you can just chat with me after.
What he said.
I leaned over and asked him because I didn't want to step on his thunder. Like, I'm just offering this as another one, just because they're a machine, but they've kicked out just so much content, especially since COVID. Is mxu.rocks.
Yep.
We all know those guys. Like,
I have a subscription, so
yeah, we've worked
It's
with
amazing.
them. They have a really extended library. They hit on some of the same stuff in a different way. They have some like insights on some pieces too, having built some relationships with other people. That is beneficial. We've vested into it as a church just because of the size of our team and what we were specifically trying to hit in some ways. It worked for us. That being said, we've also partnered with these guys to work through hey, this is some of the processes that we've done. We were talking a couple of days ago about trying to do a walkthrough of some of our systems and just help add to what they're doing, and just kind of be that partnership with the local guys that are trying to benefit the church in that way. So yeah, all of the above.
Anything that has team, like that you can give to your team easily is, I think, yeah. The cool thing about MXU is they have like team assignments. So you can say, go watch these 3 lessons. And
I've done that before. I have. So during COVID, we made a big pivot where we put in the same lighting console in all of our rooms from the little kids. It's a Stream Deck that you press this button and it turns on this cue in our Hog for PC console, all the way up to we're using like the big boy standard on tour size Hog. Because I could trust, sorry guys, I could trust my young guys, even down to junior high, with a lighting console. They're not going to hurt anybody with lights. I can't turn them loose with a $500,000 PA just yet, because you could physically hurt somebody's ears if you mess up bad enough.
That's right.
That being said, I'm also training a bunch of I've got half of my crew. I was texting with one of my junior high kids right now. Can you come jump on a big Sony broadcast size camera this weekend? Because we've worked through that training and spent the time. High school and junior high, you guys are so you get technology so fast versus my suburban dads and soccer moms. Not that they can't get it, they just take longer. And you guys, you're in extracurricular, but you have so much more free time kind of to come and do that stuff. But man, dig into these guys. They're hungry and they pick up technology so fast, and they're online watching everything else on TikTok and whatever the new platform was yesterday I heard about. I'm old. I'm sorry, I'm old. But
MySpace. Is that
That's still a
is
thing?
not a thing? Oh, okay.
it's not.
No,
I just
guess.
updated the songs on
I
mine.
don't know.
But they're already online. Put them in front of these types of courses and just, guys, go spend your free time doing that. Just soak it all up, all of it, and learn a trade. That's a trade. I have 3 on my staff, full time, who came out of our youth group program. They came up through high school. So cool. One's my lead LD. One is in charge of some of my youth tech stuff. 2 of them are now at other churches as a tech director, and he's an LD for a production company out of Kansas. Invest in them. Yes, there's a lot of pastoring as you guys are figuring out all the other things you deal with in high school and junior high, but man, they're hungry. Go after them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Physically
Feed
and
them.
metaphorically.
Feed them, feed them, feed them.
So I'm just going to read a text from the guy I talked about, Jamie. He had gotten a email from one of the dads of one of our high school kids. His name is Caleb. He started up as a freshman. I was telling Luke about this at breakfast. Just starting off on the Behringer board, learning how to change the name of the little color things, and he thought that was the coolest thing ever, right? And he was like, yeah, wow, that's thing. And he goes, what else can I do? And so we just started training him. He's now a production director at a church because he goes to ASU, and on the weekends he goes to a church down there in Phoenix, and he saw them trying hard to make it work, and he goes, I could help you with that. And they're like, you know this stuff? And then he's like, yeah, a little bit. And that was it. He started, and he learned, and now he's running the show. So it can happen. So be encouraged. Use the young people. You do have to, and he kind of talked about this in his breakout, you have to disciple them. You have to pour into them. Not just about teaching them the tech. You have to teach them the heart, because that's
Make
what's
them
gonna
good
give
humans while you're making them good techs.
Exactly.
Great. Let's go back over here, then we'll come to you again. How to recruit volunteers.
Free food, donuts.
We were talking about a while ago making worship and tech one team, and those times of getting together and everything else. If I drill anything into my teams, it's you guys are better advocates for joining this team than I will ever be. You guys know people in the church that every church size that I've ever been a part of, from 300, 500 people, even now like 3,000, 4,000 people. There's no way I can hey, I know you've been looking for a place to serve, but maybe my camera op does. It's like they're in small groups. They're in hopefully in small groups. They're hopefully a part of anything in the community and rubbing shoulders. You get what I'm saying? But getting the buy-in from your team to be the advocates and the recruiters for the team, and telling people how awesome it is that I get to come and do this, see God work, and giving them tools and verbiage helps a lot. Giving them the one-liners to hand off to people, giving them some of the process on what that looks like, and just it's not scary. I did it. I have no clue what I was doing before I got here. They trained me. But you have to make sure that you are giving that training that they're leading up to. Yeah?
Yeah. I'll give you I just did a breakout on this at a different, at our church front conference in October. And there's 2 things I think tremendously help when recruiting. Yes, it's having teams that advocate for their role. But I think you should have some place on the website that talks about where people can serve, because website is just the first door people are checking out these days. Yep. Having some sort of a sign-up form or an interest form that gets forwarded to your leader's email or whatever that says Johnny has express interest in serving, wants to know more about it. You give them a job description that kind of lays out on one page, here's what this, like the purpose of this role is, here's what we expect, and here's the time commitment required. That's like all done in a Google Doc. Like it does not need to be fancy, does not need to be expensive. You can use Google Forms to do that. And then I would advocate for and try to kind of communicate to your leadership. This doesn't work in every church, but I think some sort of a quarterly opportunity for you to celebrate the teams that are currently serving from the platform. Like so often, kids ministry is the best example for this, but tech also applies. But the pastor or the leader will stand on stage and make a big push. Hey, we need a ton of help back in kids. Like, please, we're asking you to serve. We're asking you to serve. And that just kind of communicates that you only value those roles when you see a void or a need for them. So I just advocate for some sort of a quarterly, like, hey guys, thanks this morning for, worshiping with us. Hey, while we're at it, don't you just love our worship team? Don't you just love our tech team? Would you join me in thanking them? We're clapping for them. They come here every Sunday, early morning. They set up, they tear down, they practice so that we can have an opportunity to engage. They're running cameras so that if you're sick or if you're, at home taking care of family, that you've got a stream to watch or a recording to watch after the fact. Just celebratory kind of atmosphere and attitude towards those people. If you can kind of get that into the culture so that people are encouraged by the people who are serving and not feeling like it's just this plea of desperation from the platform. And then I think you need, the last thing is showing up in the same place every week with some clear action steps. So one of the things, I used to go to a church called Austin Stone in Austin, Texas, and I stole this directly from them, but they had a worship gathering once a quarter where they would put all the different roles that you could serve in that they had available at that current time on a slide. And so it would have like electric player students, electric player main worship, like worship leader, kids ministry. They would just have all the different roles and how many roles they had available because they're a multi-campus church. So they might have 2 or 3 roles available. And so having a slide like that kind of in your pre or post announcement loop that just says, hey, if you're interested in joining, these are the roles we have available for worship or tech or whatever you're advertising for. If you're interested, contact Katie. She'll be at the tech booth after service. And then every Sunday for the rest of the time, you just stand back at the tech booth and you just shake hands, you make eye contact. Hey, good to see you this week. And if somebody sees that slide or has those next steps, they're gonna, even a new visitor would come up to you and say, man, I've played bass for like 6 years. I didn't know that you guys were looking for bass players. But if you showed them that you are and you gave them a next step, that's like half the battle of, we just think, why, like it's breaking down that education barrier of information and doing it in a healthy, consistent, very kind of open way so that people know how to use the gifts that God has given them. What is my action step? Okay, I play guitar. They're looking for guitar players. It says, see Katie at the worship booth or at the front doors after service. I'm going to go, where's Katie? I need to talk to Katie. Like, people will take that action if God is moving in their hearts to allow them to serve. And so I just think giving them, a place on the website to kind of describe what it is and an opportunity to express that interest so you can make that connection. A description somewhere non-invasive of your services. I wouldn't use this in like an announcement time, but a pre-post roll of announcement slides of like, hey, we're having a potluck after service, or here's the youth event that's coming up. Here's the ways that you can serve in worship and tech. I think that's kind of an easy, and I think one last language piece I'll say if you use that slides method, one of the things with tech is that I would put no experience needed on that slide. Because a lot of people think, man, I have to be an IT engineer to serve on the tech team because everybody's techie. All of my volunteers on my production team at Storyline come from zero tech background. I mean, but they want to serve faithfully. And so if you say, yeah, we train you here, and it's really not rocket science. I mean, audio is probably like the top tier of, you might want some experience or some onboarding training.
Camera up. Do you know in, out, left, right, up, down, zoom? Like, I tell people, like, if you know your left hand and right hand, we can train you to be a camera operator.
Yep.
And that's a great entry level to, like, get them in the door.
Yep.
Then maybe they start learning some other stuff.
Yeah, one thing that we also do is we give them example. So when we do the quarterly kind of a rundown, like, hey, here's where you can serve, here's what you can do. I get I'm going to say this politely, a little bit more mature, elderly person who's on our team, and I get one of the young high school guys and gals, and we come up there, and I either do it or, just to make it quick, we'll just say, because it's serving Sunday, right? And we'll say, hey, this is Josh. Josh came in, and he's now one of our camera operators. Josh, what was it like to come in here? Oh, I really liked it. It's great. Did you get the training? Yeah. And, we kiddingly say, plus I get free donuts. Okay, great. And then we bring in the youth guy, and we say, hey, what's your most favorite thing about working on the tech team? Oh, I really love the fact that I got to learn everything. I started at lights, now I'm on Pro Presenter, and then I want to be camera. It's fun. Now they get to see people that are sitting next to them up on stage doing the things that, oh wow, I can do that, which kind of comes down to the no experience necessary.
And I think too, something that, regardless of not just the production or worship side, but really in any ministry, is relationship.
Yeah.
And relationship is so key and so important. And so when you get that opportunity, maybe sound check's done and you don't have to be back behind the sound booth anymore, or you're not on stage, go meet people.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself to people, talk to them. And that relationship is going to carry, because, maybe they're not the one that's going to serve, but the friend that they bring next time is. And now that person, and you walk by and talk to them, and you've built this relationship with them, and who knows where that could go. It's all discipleship too,
We made our band, you cannot sit in the green room in between services. Like, we made that a rule. Like, you don't get to hide back there during service. Go out there, because they just saw you on stage. Now you're out there in the lobby. Maybe they come out and be like, dude, I loved that lick, man. I play guitar. You play guitar? Man, you should come audition sometime. Like, that relational piece. And so I've been trying to get my techs to do that too. They're a little harder because we tend to not be quite as extrovert and relational as
People
easy.
are scary.
Humans are gray matter, and I don't understand them. But trying to just get them out there, and my camera ops, like, they're sitting out in the room, kind of the same thing as the vocalist or guitar player on stage. So,
All right, so we're at time, but we put off a question. Are you guys good for another question?
Yep.
All right.
It's just a quick redundancy question. You stream to whatever studio and so forth, you've got a recording of it. But if the stream goes down, what's a good redundant backup for recording purposes?
So what's a good recording backup if your stream goes down?
So just to ask, you're recording on the service, and that's all the only place you're recording?
Yeah, we're streaming it, and it, through Resi or Vimeo or whatever.
Right.
You have that recording.
Okay.
Recording. Is there a good just recommendation?
What I do is I just make the recorder part of the stream. So Hyperdeck is a great example from Blackmagic. It's very inexpensive. You can use SD cards, and what I do is I bring it in there, and then I send it out to that, because at that point I have the full mix and the video coming from Program Out coming in, and it just goes in and out. That way I have it on the card, and then if the deck or the card goes out, I've got it online. If the online goes down, I've got it on card.
All right, great. Well, thank you guys. And, maybe if you have some individual questions, you guys will be here for a few minutes. So
We're around.
if you have individual questions,
Thank you.
go ahead and come up. Thank you, guys.